Democracy is often treated as something unquestionable. For many people, it represents freedom, fairness, and progress. But some thinkers argue that democracy is not only flawed, they believe it systematically fails over time. One of the most controversial books on this topic is Democracy, the God That Failed, by Hans Hermann Hoppe. The goal of this video is not to promote a political side, but to explain the core ideas behind the argument and why it generates so much debate. At its core, the book challenges a common assumption that democracy naturally leads to better long-term outcomes for society. The argument begins with incentives. Human behavior is strongly shaped by incentives, not intentions. And according to the author, democracy creates incentives that favor short-term decisions over long-term responsibility. In a democratic system, leaders are temporary managers of power. They do not own the resources they control, and they know their time in office is limited. This creates a psychological and structural tendency to prioritize immediate gains over long-term consequences. When someone manages something they do not own, they are more likely to extract value quickly rather than preserve it. This behavior is not necessarily malicious, it is human. The book contrasts this with systems where power is more permanent. In those systems, the argument goes, leaders may have stronger incentives to preserve resources, stability, and long-term value because they expect to bear the future consequences of their actions. Whether one agrees or not, the key point is behavioral. Short-term control often leads to short-term thinking. Another idea discussed is responsibility diffusion. In democracies, decisions are often framed as the will of the people. When everyone is partially responsible, no one feels fully responsible. This psychological effect can reduce accountability. If outcomes are bad, blame becomes abstract. Mistakes feel collective, not personal. The book also questions the belief that voting automatically leads to better decisions. Voting does not require deep knowledge, long-term thinking, or personal cost. As a result, people may vote based on emotion, identity, or short-term benefits rather than careful analysis. From a behavioral perspective, this aligns with what we know about human psychology. Most humans are not naturally long-term planners. We respond strongly to immediate rewards, fear, and social pressure. The author argues that democracy amplifies these tendencies instead of correcting them. Another key concept is expansion of power. Democratic systems often justify growth in authority by claiming popular support. Over time, this can normalize higher taxes, more regulation, and broader control, all framed as collective decisions. Again, the argument is not that people are evil, but that systems shape behavior. When costs are spread across millions and benefits are concentrated, expansion becomes easier to justify. Critics of the book point out serious issues with these arguments. They argue that democracy, despite its flaws, allows peaceful transitions of power, limits abuse, and provides mechanisms for correction. They also note that alternative systems can concentrate power dangerously and suppress dissent. This is where the debate becomes important. The book does not present democracy as morally evil, but as structurally flawed from an incentive perspective. Whether one agrees or disagrees, the real value of the discussion lies in understanding how systems interact with human behavior. Democracy does not operate in a vacuum. It operates through humans, emotional, imperfect, short-term thinkers. The book forces an uncomfortable question. Is a system good because it sounds fair, or because it consistently produces good outcomes? Understanding this question does not require taking a political side. It requires recognizing how incentives shape behavior at every level of society. Human behavior does not change because a system has good intentions. It changes when incentives change. And that insight goes far beyond politics.